Greetings, and welcome back to the 31 Nights of Frights. In the last episode, we took a look at the timeless masterpiece that is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, a truly one-of-a-kind film that is still considered by many to be the very best of the horror genre. Its iconic visuals and imagery have forever made their mark on cinema history and popular culture as a whole. Whereas The Shining instills this feeling of dread within its viewer, today's movie does quite the opposite. We actually haven't taken a look at any horror comedy films during this series yet, and that's two genres that surprisingly go really well together. I'm not really sure why that's the case, but I think it might have to do with the fact that these two genres should be on the complete opposite sides of the spectrum from each other. It's hard to say exactly when horror comedy began. However, a lot of people say that horror comedy was properly established in the year 1948, with the release of the movie Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Since then, we've seen an abundance of horror comedy movies, with such examples as 1975's The Rocky Horror Picture Show, 1988's Beetlejuice, pretty much every installment of the Evil Dead franchise, and since the start of the 21st century, with parody movies such as 2000's Scary Movie, the subgenre only became more and more popular. One film that I watched recently was a film called Slacks, a film about a pair of killer jeans. Just when you think you've seen it all, they come at you with the killer pants. But it was actually quite a good film, I won't even lie. But today, we're going to be taking a look at a movie that may be the greatest example of a horror comedy, that manages to balance both of these genres with absolute perfection. It also happens to be one of my favourite movies, John Landis's An American Werewolf in London. The plot of the film follows two American backpackers, David, played by David Norton, and Jack, played by Griffin Dunne, who, while travelling across the Yorkshire moors here in England, come across the Slaughtered Lamb pub in a small village of East Proctor. After being warned by the not so welcoming locals to stick to the roads and stay clear of the moors, they are both attacked by a werewolf. Jack is killed by the beast, while David is seriously injured. But not just that, he is now cursed to turn into a werewolf himself whenever there is a full moon. David awakens 3 weeks after the attack at a hospital in London, and I've never understood why they had to take him to London. There's plenty of hospitals up here in the north of England. Then again, I guess that the title An American Werewolf in Bradford wouldn't exactly have the same ring to it, would it? At this hospital, he meets nurse Alex Price, played by Jenny Agutter, who he quickly develops a relationship with, but things aren't all moonlight and roses. In fact, moonlight is the last thing David wants, as Jack's corpse continues to appear to him and warn him that unless he takes his own life before the next full moon, he will most certainly turn into a beast and kill others. And as a result, his victims will be cursed to walk the earth in limbo, neither dead or alive, just like Jack. David dismisses what Jack is telling him and believes he is just going crazy. That is, until the next full moon comes around, and with the help of some of the best special effects put to screen by the legend that is Rick Baker, David transforms into the four-legged monster. He then goes on a vicious rampage through the streets of London and on the underground, killing multiple people in the process. An American Werewolf in London is a really important film to me personally, as it's the first horror film I ever laid my eyes on. We used to have the film on a VHS when I was little, and I don't know what happened to that copy of the film. But anyway, one fateful night my dad was watching the movie, and a little 4-year-old me waddled into the room, just in time to see the shot of David's yellow eyes widening open, bearing those sharp teeth in the film's dream sequence. And I was absolutely terrified. When I first met David Norton at a horror convention, I told him this story, and he found it really funny before calling my dad an asshole, which he is. But years later, I'm extremely thankful for that moment, as it was my first look into the world of horror. And now An American Werewolf in London is one of my all-time favourite films. So I guess it's all come full circle really. Now I can't fully express just how much I adore this film. The director, John Landis, wrote the first draft of the screenplay way back in 1969, where it was shelved for over a decade, as many people believe that the film was too funny to be a horror movie, but also too scary to be a comedy film. And I personally believe that the film balances these two things with perfection. This film has so many moments that have me howling every single time I watch it. All of the jokes and dark humour land with great success, and they just never get old. My personal favourite moments are the interactions that David has with the ghost of Jack, who progressively becomes more decomposed to the point where he's a puppet by the end of the film, which is also hilarious within itself. The conversations these two characters have always crack me up. I love that despite the bleak situation of David being a werewolf and the fact that Jack is literally a rotting corpse, they still talk like best friends and have banter with one another. The whole thing is genius, and on top of that, the comedic timing is spot on.
Can I have a piece of toast?
Get the f out of here, Jack.
Thanks a lot.
But on the other side of things, there are some genuinely scary moments in the film. The opening scene, in fact, may be the best example, as the tension just builds and builds as they both walk across the Yorkshire moors in the pitch black darkness, in fear that the beast is after them. Another thing that's great about this film is its ironically upbeat soundtrack that uses songs that all have moon in the title. I should also mention that the performances in this film are just terrific. The whole cast is absolutely solid, and there's some fantastic actors taking smaller roles throughout the film. Brian Glover, who is known for the British film 𝘎𝑗, plays the main resident of East Proctor, along with comedy legend Rik Mayall in an early role. On top of this, the filmmaker and puppeteer Frank Oz, best known for directing 1986's The Little Shop of Horrors and being the voice of Yoda himself, is here in the role of Mr. Collins. Werewolf you are! Now, it wouldn't be a review of An American Werewolf in London if I didn't talk about the iconic transformation sequence. To this day, this stands as the greatest transformation scene in film history, and one of the finest examples of practical effects. All of the makeup and special effects work was done by the one and only Rick Baker, who won the Best Makeup Oscar for his work. It's rare that the horror genre receives such accolades as an Oscar, but on top of that, this was actually the first Academy Award win for this category. 40 years later, and people still talk about the effects work in the film, and they stand as some of cinema's most influential. And speaking of the werewolf, I love the design of this thing. Usually, werewolves are depicted as bipedal, to blur the lines between man and wolf. But apparently, John Landis requested for Rick Baker to build a four-legged beast from hell, and that's exactly what he did. Look at that thing, it's f***ing awesome. One thing that I've always wanted from a horror collection is a life-size bust of the werewolf. That would just be sick. Maybe one day it will happen when I'm a millionaire or something, but in fact, I'd actually love to own more American Werewolf stuff in general. I've got the NECA figure that came out not too long ago, but there isn't much else out there. One of my favourite art prints that I have on the wall is this unreal art print by the artist 𝙎𝑼𝙇𝙎, and I have it signed by both David Norton and Michael Carter, who plays Gerald Bringsley, the man that the wolf kills on the London Underground. He also played Bib Fortuna in Return of the Jedi, you know, that bloke with the cock wrapped around his neck. Both of these guys were an absolute pleasure to meet, and I hope in the future I could meet and thank more people involved with this awesome film. The legacy of An American Werewolf in London cannot be overstated, and it still inspires filmmakers and artists to this day. From its perfect blend of horror and comedy that went on to be a huge influence on directors such as Edgar Wright, to Rick Baker's groundbreaking special effects, which led to both Baker and Landis working on the legendary music video for Michael Jackson's Thriller. Jackson was such a big fan of the movie that he chose Landis to direct the video and Rick Baker to oversee the makeup effects. Thriller. Just think about that. If it wasn't for An American Werewolf in London, we wouldn't have Thriller. At least not the Thriller that we know today. So in conclusion, An American Werewolf in London has gone on to be one of horror's most beloved films, and is often named as the greatest werewolf movie ever made. The film was a milestone in horror cinema due to its perfect blending of horror and comedy, and its incredible special effects just add to its enduring legacy and influence. It will forever hold a place in my heart as not just one of my favourite movies, but also the first horror film that I ever laid my eyes on. Look at me now. I honestly don't think there's a time where I've ever gone down to London and I've not been to multiple filming locations for this movie. It's almost obligatory to do it when I'm down there. Overall, An American Werewolf in London is a film that has its tongue placed firmly within its cheek, and it's absolutely timeless. So thank you for watching today's video. Don't forget to join me in the next episode as we take a look at my favourite horror franchise of all time. I'll see you there.